All right, everybody, we are looking at a complete TRS-80 Model I, and we are going to be putting this together with the expansion interface here. And luckily I've got, of course, the hardware manual with all sorts of great information. I mean, this thing is just pristine condition. I mean, even the page wear is very minimal. This is a little intimidating. I have not worked with a TRS-80 in the past, so I'm going to be kind of following this step by step. But the ultimate goal here is to get the base unit and everything put together, get the power supplies installed in the expansion, and then, basically hook everything up so we can use the 2 disk drives and, just see how this thing works. Test out some of the software we've got, maybe play around with it some, but here you can kind of see the way the monitor on looks like a newer TRS-80 might sit, but this looks to be the bigger one, perhaps. But we're gonna have to get a good look at this here and just get her working. I really want to see this thing running some programs. This will be a longer form video, so we'll get it together and see where it goes from here. Okay, so step 1 of our RadioShack TRS-80 expansion interface is to take off the smaller cover. And inside here, you can see there are 2 bays. These are for your power supplies. There's one DIN connector here that one of the power supplies, this one, plugs into. Then the other cabling routes out here on this side. And basically one of the DINs goes to the base unit and the 2 power plugs will go to the line interface. Okay, here we are loaded up. Our power supplies are installed. You can see this one didn't come quite as clean as the other, but DIN connector is in there, if you can see that. All plugged in. Interestingly enough, the cable is still really long, so you have to kind of squish it in here. And then the 3 cables, of course, run out the back. I just think it's so neat that all this time back in the day, RadioShack was, trying to make a nice, clean presentation for the TRS-80. So the whole purpose of this expansion is so that you can hook up multiple peripherals. And I mean, when you look at it, it's trying to put together this complete picture of this tight sort of interconnected interface so that you don't have to take up a giant table of space to run this rig. So, just kind of interesting for such a time when, computers were so large, the modernity of cable management and trying to create a clean view, so that this has a nice aesthetic. That I think is just really interesting. Although I would say I worry about heat when I plug this in because there's not a ton of ventilation here. Luckily, this isn't something that's going to be running all the time, but you got to think this was probably installed in offices and airports and places where heat management was probably not ideal. Makes me wonder, is this something that ran long term? Maybe there's some other TRS-80 enthusiasts out there that are of the era that could maybe give me some tips on that. Leave that in the comments, and we'll just keep continuing on. So here's the first kind of challenge with setting up this Trash 80. Is we've got the front and rear views there, and you can see we're really just concerned at this point with our floppy controller here. And I've got this ribbon cable, which appears to have come with the unit, and it's got, looks like a daisy chain of up to 4. And if I remember right, the TRS-80 is capable of handling up to 4 floppy drives. Of course, I've only got 2. So it's just going to be kind of trial and error, but I'm pretty sure the termination is the first connected and second connected when you have a 2 setup. So the other 2 will be just dead ends, but hopefully this doesn't cause an issue because I've actually got multiple ribbon cables here and not 100% clear. Some of this looks to be like custom setup stuff for, looks like a TV interface for a larger screen. So hoping that I can kind of figure this out trial and error without screwing anything up. I feel like it'll be fine, but It's going to be a little touch and go, but definitely the basics should be pretty much straightforward. Okay, we are all connected. We haven't yet plugged in the actual power yet, but just to show you, we got the 2 disk drives, CPU, expansion interface, monitor. Now, I've noticed on this expansion interface there's a little, I'm not sure if that's an indicator light or maybe an infrared sensor that was added later. That's not stock. So I'm not sure what the purpose of that is, but maybe I'll figure that out someday. But I wanted to point out on this line filter. Now, at first glance, this looks like just a normal power block, but you can see it's divvied up here into different segments, and it's labeled actually. So you've got your monitor, expansion interface, and CPU, which either plug is, I think, fine, because it's the same amperage. And then you've got 5 spots for peripherals. So really interesting that they cut it up that way, but it is pretty nice because in case there's a significant purpose, I wanted to make sure it's right. So I did trace down everything. I tried to clean these plugs up too, but I can see they're still fairly dirty. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get some power to this, and we are going to officially power on this TRS-80. Alrighty, now since this is not a surge protector, I've connected it through a surge protector. Just on the off chance something were to happen, I want to preserve this beautiful equipment. So I'm going to fire it up, and we are going to see how this old dog works. Oop. We've got some life, at least in one of the drives. Second drive, not sure. Looks like the CPU is good. Fire up the monitor here. Give her a second or two. Oh. Adjusting the knobs here. Looks like we got some junk code, but it does appear to be working, so that's good. So I guess we can officially say that the TRS-80 works. I'm going to see if we can get this cleared off and doing something. All right, guys. Excuse me. So after a little trial and error and Googling, I figured out how to get rid of the junk code. So you can see here I was able to get into BASIC and got everything up and running. However, I would like to point out that as I was fiddling with one of the drives, I touched the outer case and my fingers went numb. So there is an absurd amount of current running through the chassis on at least this first mini disc. Second mini disc doesn't appear to be running. I'm not sure if it just isn't being triggered or is maybe just a dead drive. Not sure there, but what I do know is that this all works. Everything works as intended. I'm going to go ahead. I've got a floppy here of TRS-80 DOS. I'm going to go ahead and try and get that booted and just see what we can see.